Well, we know that phonetics is the study of human speech sounds. How is it different from phonology? Phonology has something to do more with the properties of human speech sounds in itself. It studies certain sorts of mental organization, particularly certain types of mental category, mentally stored representations, and generalizations about said categories and representations.
No matter how many languages we speak, there is at least one language that we are a native speaker of. When we live, think, and breathe a language, we possess a certain sort of linguistic knowledge. Apparently, our knowledge of a native language is a largely unconscious one. This knowledge contains semantic knowledge. That's something to do with the meanings of words, phrases, and sentences. And syntactic knowledge. That is, the syntactic categories of words, with the structure of phrases and sentences, and with the syntactic relations between words, phrases, and clauses.
For example, a native English speaker can judge that "Who did you go to class with?" is an English sentence, but "Who class would you go?" is not. That speaker knows this intuitively or not necessarily fully conscious. They could make that judgment even if they don't have the faintest idea of what a noun or a verb might be, or what the synthetic categories of words are. In this video, we are going to jump into what form said knowledge takes, to see whether we were right about speakers' unconscious phonological knowledge. We must pay close attention to speech sounds and their properties.
The phoneme.
We can compare voiceless unaspirated and voiceless aspirated stops in English and Indonesian. Speakers of most accents of English utter both aspirated and unaspirated voiceless stops.
Let's read some of the examples. Pull, appear, and spurt.
It appears that voiceless stops are aspirated when they are at the beginning of a stressed syllable, like in pull and appear, but unaspirated when they preceded by a voiceless alveolar fricative, as in spurt. That is, in the example shown on screen, wherever the unaspirated voiceless stops appear, the aspirated ones do not, and vice versa. The distribution of unaspirated and aspirated stop in English is mutually exclusive. That means where you get one kind of stops, you never get the other. This is called complementary distribution.
Compare this with some Indonesian examples. In these examples, we can see that Indonesian only has voiceless unaspirated stops. Let's read some of them. Padi, pintu, tadi, and tapi. If English is in complementary distribution, in Indonesian, aspiration is neutralized. Only p, t, k occur phonemically, and aspirated stops p, t, k do not appear. Therefore, there is no complementary distribution.
Going back to English, if we take the stops t and t in the English examples, it is clear that they are phonetically similar. Both are stops, voiceless, and alveolar. And yet, for most English speakers, the alveolar stops in still and till sound the same,
despite the fact that still is unaspirated and till is aspirated.
For the English speaker, they might count as the same thing, but actually, we can't say that they are the same sound and not the same sound. What we will say that, while they are phonetically distinct, they are also phonologically equivalent.
This means the two types of stop are interpreted to belong to a single mental category, and we will refer to such as a phoneme. There are some terms we have to understand, which are realization and allophones. English speakers interpret these 6 phonetic segments in terms of only these 3 phonemes. This is how we can depict it. Realization is the relationship between phonemes and their associated phonetic segments. For example, the phoneme p is realized as p after a voiceless alveolar fricative and as p elsewhere. So, aspiration, or the lack of it, from what we've learned so far, is predictable in English. There's a general rule or generalization in which, context given, voiceless stops will and will not be aspirated. The realizations of a phoneme which are entirely predictable from context are called its allophones. Therefore, p and p are allophones of the p phoneme.
Native speakers of English possess mental categories, that is, phonemes and phonological generalization or rules as part of their largely unconscious knowledge. They perceive allophones they hear in terms of those categories and generalization. Taking example from another language, Korean, these words only differ in whether they have aspirated or unaspirated voiceless stops. But this difference changes the meanings. The difference is known to be semantically contrastive. The pairs of words which differ in only one sound, like this example, are called minimal pairs.
We now have adapted what is known as the phonemic principle, which consists of two sets of two criteria, that is, two or more sounds are the realizations of the same phoneme if they are in complementary distribution and they are phonetically similar. And then, two or more sounds are realizations of different phonemes if they are in parallel or overlapping distribution, and they serve to signal a semantic contrast.
We know now that the allophones of a phoneme are predictable realizations of that phoneme. We can predict which allophone will occur, given a specific context. The contexts sometimes are general, but in some cases they are more specific. In many accents of English, the r phoneme has these two realizations. That circle under the right one is called subscript diacritic. It indicates voicelessness in the sound, so the r in try is voiceless. We can see that the voice and voiceless alveolar approximants are in complementary distribution. That is, the voiceless one appears only after voiceless consonants, and the voiced one appears elsewhere.
So, should we say that there is a voice alveolar approximant phoneme which is realized as a voiceless allophone after voiceless consonant? Or that there is a voiceless alveolar approximant phoneme which is realized as a voice approximant after voice consonant and between vowels? We're choosing the former claim because it is more phonetically natural. Approximant are normally voiced. So we can make phonetic sense that a voice phoneme has a voiceless realization with its follow voiceless consonant.
Summing up, we have begun by distinguishing between phonetics, defined as the study of speech sounds in itself, and phonology, the study of the system of mental representation, categories, and generalizations to which those sounds are related. Sometimes we, as a native speaker of a language, tend to take its phonological system for granted. For instance, in English, speakers might think that and are distinct, despite the fact that they are very similar phonetically. Equally, speakers of English cannot easily see p and p are different, despite the fact that they are.
This video has sought to show that under these perceptions is the phonological system of a native language as distinct form if intimately related to the set of speech sounds uttered by native speakers.
We can begin to appreciate the extent to which one's native language phonemic categories affects one's perception when we consider that any normal 6-month-old child, no matter what language they begin to acquire, can distinguish aspirated and unaspirated voiceless stops. Clearly, this aspirated or unaspirated difference is, in principle, acting as the basis of phonemic distinction, and it clearly does act that way in many human languages.
But in the case of English, where the aspirated or unaspirated difference is allophonic, a child will come to ignore that difference at a certain level of awareness.
As native speaker of a language and its learner, we can begin to develop an awareness of our own phonological system and of the immense influence this has on our perception of speech sound.
That's it from us. This is our video on the phonemic principle for the final project of English Phonetics Phonology year 2025.
We hope this video not only pushes us to get deeper into the subject, but also helps you guys to understand it more.
Big thanks to this book by Philip Carr as the primary source of this video.
Thanks for watching!